The smell hit me first. Disinfectant mixed with something I didn't want to think about too hard. I stood in the doorway of what would supposedly be my new home, watching a cockroach scurry across the cracked linoleum floor of Sunset Manor. My son Darnell stood behind me, phone pressed to his ear, already making his escape plans. "Yeah, Mom's all settled in," he was saying to someone. "Found the cheapest place in town. $500 a month, can you believe it? Some of these fancy places wanted $3,000. Like I'm made of money." I turned to look at him, this 45-year-old man I'd raised, fed, clothed, and put through college. He wouldn't even meet my eyes, just kept talking into that phone like I wasn't standing right there. "Listen, I gotta run. Yeah, the old lady will be fine here. They've got activities and stuff." Activities? I looked around at the common room where 3 elderly residents sat slumped in wheelchairs, staring at a television that wasn't even turned on. One woman was calling for help, but nobody seemed to care. "Darnell," I said quietly, "are you sure about this place? Maybe we could look at somewhere else." "Mom, we've been through this a million times," he snapped, finally putting his phone away. "This is what I can afford." Dad didn't exactly leave us rich, you know. We're lucky they had an opening. Lucky. That's what he called dumping his 68-year-old mother in this nightmare. The truth was burning in my chest, the secret I'd kept for 2 years since my husband Marcus died. The patents from his tech innovations, the ones he'd developed in our garage 20 years ago, had finally paid off big time. $8.2 million sat in a trust fund that wouldn't mature until my 70th birthday. Marcus had set it up that way, wanting to make sure I'd be taken care of in my final years, but I'd never told Darnell about the money. After watching how he treated his father's funeral arrangements, cutting every corner possible, I'd wanted to see what kind of man my son really was when he thought nobody was watching. Now I knew. Mrs. Washington, a tired-looking woman in scrubs, appeared beside us. Her name tag read Brenda, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "I'm the day supervisor. Let me show you to your room." She led us down a hallway where the paint was peeling and several light bulbs were burned out. The carpet was stained with things I didn't want to identify. From behind closed doors, I could hear coughing, crying, and the occasional shout for help that went unanswered. "Here we are," Brenda said, pushing open a door to reveal a tiny room with 2 narrow beds. One was already occupied by an elderly woman who was lying perfectly still, staring at the ceiling. "That's Mrs. Chen," Brenda explained. "She's been here 3 years, doesn't talk much anymore." Doesn't talk or nobody listens, I wondered. "The bathroom's down the hall," Brenda continued. "Meals are at 7, noon, and 5, no exceptions. Visiting hours are weekends only, 2 to 4. Weekends only." I looked at Darnell, who was already checking his watch. "Sounds perfect," he said. "Mom, you're gonna love it here. Look, I really gotta go. Ashley's got that parent-teacher conference thing." Ashley, his wife who'd made it clear from day one that there wasn't room for me in their big suburban house, the same house I'd helped them buy with the down payment money from selling my and Marcus's home. "Will you come visit next weekend?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. "We'll see," he said, giving me a quick, awkward hug. "Depends on the kids' schedules." And then he was gone, just like that. 45 years of raising him, and he walked away like I was a problem he'd finally solved. I sat down on the thin mattress and looked around my new world. The walls were a sickly yellow color, and there was a water stain on the ceiling that looked like it had been there for years. My roommate hadn't moved or acknowledged my presence at all. "Mrs. Chen," I said softly, "I'm Dolores Washington." Nothing, not even a blink. That first night was the longest of my life. The mattress was so thin I could feel the springs digging into my back. Mrs. Chen made wheezing sounds all night, and somewhere down the hall, someone was crying. But worse than the physical discomfort was the realization of what my son had done to me. The next morning, I met my first glimpse of the staff that would be caring for me. A young man named Tyler brought breakfast, if you could call it that, watery oatmeal, burnt toast, and Suspenseful that tasted like it had been sitting around since yesterday. "Is there any sugar?" I asked politely. "You get what you get," Tyler said without even looking at me. "Diabetics can't have sugar anyway." "I'm not diabetic." "Whatever, lady. I don't have time to play favorites." He slammed the tray down so hard that the coffee spilled all over the toast. Then he just walked away, leaving me to clean up the mess with the one thin napkin he'd provided. Over the next few days, I started to understand the horrible reality of Sunset Manor. The staff was overworked, underpaid, and many of them simply didn't care. I watched Tyler roughly handle an elderly man named Franklin while helping him to the bathroom. I saw another aide, Jessica, ignore Mrs. Rodriguez when she asked for help getting dressed. But the worst was what I witnessed on my 4th day there. I was walking to the common room when I heard shouting from the room next to mine. Through the partially open door, I could see Tyler grabbing the arm of a frail woman named Dorothy. "I told you to stop calling for help," he was yelling. "Nobody's coming. You're stuck here just like the rest of them." Dorothy was crying, trying to pull away from his grip. "Please, I just need to use the bathroom." "Should have thought of that before you wet yourself yesterday," Tyler snarled. "Now you can wait until I feel like helping you." I wanted to march in there and give Tyler a piece of my mind, but I was 68 years old, new to this place, and completely powerless. Or so Tyler thought. That night, lying on my terrible mattress, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to just survive this place. I was going to do something about it. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Edmund Davies. "Mrs. Washington?" He sounded surprised to hear from me. "How can I help you?" "Edmund, I need to access my trust fund early. Is there any way to do that?" There was a pause. "Well, there are provisions for medical emergencies and care needs. Given your current situation, we might be able to make a case. Can I ask why?" I looked around at the peeling paint, the broken furniture, the staff who treated us like we were already dead. "I want to buy this nursing home." Another pause, longer this time. "You want to buy Sunset Manor?" "Every brick, every bed, every square inch of it." "And Edmund?" "I want to do it anonymously. Can you set up a shell company or something?" "Absolutely. How quickly do you need this done?" I watched Tyler walk past my door, saw him shove past Mrs. Rodriguez without a second glance. As fast as humanly possible. 3 weeks later, everything was in motion. Edmund had managed to access most of my trust fund early by arguing that my current living situation constituted a medical emergency. The ownership transfer would be complete within days. But on that Thursday afternoon, everything changed in a way I never expected. I was sitting in the common room, pretending to watch television while actually observing the staff patterns, when I heard a familiar voice in the hallway. "Yeah, I'm here to see my mother. Dolores Washington?" My heart jumped. Darnell had come to visit. It had been over a month since he'd dropped me off, and I'd started to think he'd forgotten about me entirely. I quickly made my way to the reception area, where I found him talking to Brenda. "Room 12, she was saying. "Down the hall, second door on the right." "Actually, I'm right here," I said, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. Darnell turned around, and I was shocked by what I saw. He looked terrible. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair was messy, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Hey, Mom," he said, but there was something wrong with his voice, something desperate. "Darnell, what's wrong? You look awful." He glanced around nervously, then grabbed my arm. "Can we talk somewhere private?" We found an empty corner of the common room, away from the other residents. "Mom, I need to ask you something," he began, his hands shaking slightly. "When Dad died, are you sure there wasn't any money left? Maybe something he didn't tell you about?" My blood went cold. "Why would you ask that?" "Ashley found something," he said, pulling out his phone. "She was going through some of Dad's old papers, stuff from his workshop. Look at this." He showed me a photograph of a document I recognized immediately. It was a patent filing form from 1999 with Marcus's name on it. "Ashley did some research," Darnell continued. "These patents, Mom, they're worth millions now. Some big tech company has been paying licensing fees for years." I stared at the phone screen, my mind racing. How had Ashley found those papers? I thought Marcus and I had been so careful. "Mom?" Darnell was studying my face closely. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Did you know about this?" For just a moment, I considered telling him everything. About the trust fund, about the money that had been sitting there for 2 years. About the fact that I could have afforded the best care facility in the state. But then I remembered Tyler grabbing Dorothy's arm. I remembered the burnt toast and cold coffee. I remembered Darnell walking away from me without a backward glance. "I don't know anything about any patents," I lied smoothly. "Your father handled all the business stuff." Darnell's face fell. "But Ashley thinks a lot of things," I said sharply. "Maybe she should spend less time digging through old papers and more time teaching her children to call their grandmother." "Mom, this is serious. If there's money out there, we need to find it. I mean, look at this place." He gestured around at the shabby common room. "You shouldn't have to live like this." The irony was so thick I could taste it. Now, when he thought there might be money involved, suddenly he cared about my living conditions. "Well," I said carefully, "I suppose if there was any money, we'd need a lawyer to track it down." "Already on it," Darnell said quickly. "Ashley found this lawyer who specializes in patent stuff. Guy named Henderson. We're meeting with him tomorrow." Henderson, not Edmund Davies, my actual lawyer, who is currently in the process of buying this entire facility for me. This was getting complicated. "That's nice, dear," I said, "but don't get your hopes up. Your father wasn't exactly a business genius." We talked for a few more minutes, but I could see Darnell wasn't really listening. His mind was on the money, on the possibility that his mother might be worth something after all. After he left, I sat in my room and stared at Mrs. Chen, who still hadn't spoken a word to me. But today, for the first time, I thought I saw her eyes move slightly toward me. "Mrs. Chen," I said quietly, "what would you do if you suddenly had the power to change everything?" For a long moment, there was silence. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, she whispered, "I'd make them pay." I smiled. Maybe Mrs. Chen and I were going to get along just fine. The next morning, Edmund called with news that made my heart race. "It's done, Mrs. Washington. As of 9 a.m. today, Sunset Manor is officially owned by Caring Hands LLC, which is controlled entirely by your trust. You now own this facility." I looked around my shabby room with new eyes. This was mine now. Every peeling wall, every broken light bulb, every staff member who'd treated us like garbage. "What's my first move?" I asked. "Well, as the owner, you have complete authority to make any changes you see fit. Staff, policies, renovations, everything." Through my door, I could hear Tyler yelling at someone down the hall. Mrs. Rodriguez was crying again. Dorothy was calling for help that nobody would answer. "Edmund," I said, "I want you to schedule a staff meeting for this afternoon. Tell them the new owner wants to address everyone." "Of course. Anything else?" I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Yes. I want you to prepare termination paperwork for several employees. I'll give you the names after the meeting." "Consider it done." After I hung up, I sat quietly for a moment, savoring the feeling. Then Mrs. Chen's voice broke the silence. "What's happening?" she asked, turning her head to look at me for the first time since I'd arrived. "Change," I told her. "Big change." That afternoon, the entire staff of Sunset Manor gathered in the common room. They looked bored, annoyed at being pulled away from their duties. Tyler was slouched in a chair, playing on his phone. Jessica was filing her nails. None of them had any idea that the frail old woman they'd been ignoring for weeks was about to become their boss. Brenda, the day supervisor, stood at the front of the room. "Okay, everyone, the new owner wanted to address the staff. They should be here any minute." The front door opened, and Edmund Davies walked in, carrying a briefcase and looking every inch the expensive lawyer he was. Behind him was a man I didn't recognize, probably the facility manager Edmund had hired to help with the transition. But I stayed in my seat, just another resident watching the show. "Good afternoon," Edmund said to the assembled staff. "I represent the new ownership of Sunset Manor. There are going to be some immediate changes around here." Tyler looked up from his phone for the first time. "What kind of changes?" "Well," Edmund said, smiling slightly, "let's start with personnel." Comment below, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel to help us hit that big 5,000 subscriber milestone. We're so close, and every single one counts. It's free for you, but it means everything to this channel. And hey, while you're at it, I've left a video and also a link to a playlist on the final screen that I promise will surprise you. Seriously, don't miss them. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. Now go hit that button and be part of the journey. Edmund opened his briefcase and pulled out several folders. The facility manager beside him, a professional-looking woman named Patricia Coleman, stepped forward with a clipboard. "Before we begin," Patricia announced, "I need to inform you that everything discussed in this meeting is being recorded for legal and training purposes." I watched the staff exchange nervous glances. Tyler had finally put his phone away. Jessica stopped filing her nails. Even Brenda looked worried. The new ownership has conducted a thorough review of this facility, Edmund continued, including staff performance, resident care standards, and operational procedures. Frankly, what we've found is unacceptable. My heart was pounding. This was really happening. After weeks of watching these people treat elderly residents like garbage, justice was finally coming. Several staff members will be terminated, effective immediately, Patricia said, reading from her clipboard. When I call your name, please see me privately after this meeting. Tyler Morrison. Tyler's face went white. What? Why? I haven't done anything wrong. Jessica Hampton, Patricia continued, ignoring his protests. Jessica started crying. This isn't fair. Nobody told us there were problems. I wanted to laugh. Nobody told them? They thought screaming at elderly people and ignoring cries for help was acceptable behavior? Kevin Roberts, Sandra Williams, and unfortunately, Brenda Martinez will also need to discuss your future here. Brenda looked stunned. But I'm the day supervisor. I've been here for 8 years. Which is part of the problem, Edmund said coldly. 8 years of allowing this level of care to continue under your supervision. From my seat among the other residents, I watched the chaos unfold. Some staff members were arguing, others were crying, and a few were already heading for the door. But the best part was watching Tyler realize that his days of bullying helpless elderly people were over. The new ownership is also implementing immediate policy changes. Patricia announced over the noise. First, there will be 24-hour nursing coverage. Second, all staff will undergo mandatory sensitivity training. Third, resident complaints will be investigated within 24 hours by an independent ombudsman. Tyler stood up angrily. This is ridiculous. We do the best we can with what we've got. These old people complain about everything anyway. Half of them don't even know where they are. The room went silent. Even the other staff members looked embarrassed by his outburst. Edmund smiled coldly. Thank you, Mr. Morrison, for perfectly demonstrating why you're being terminated. Security will escort you out immediately. Security? I looked around and saw 2 uniformed guards I hadn't noticed before, standing by the entrance. This Edmund was thorough. As Tyler was escorted out, still cursing and complaining, I felt Mrs. Chen's hand touch mine. She was smiling for the first time since I'd met her. Is this really happening? She whispered. It's just the beginning, I whispered back. After the meeting, the facility transformed overnight. The staff members who remained were suddenly attentive and polite. The new nurses Patricia had hired were professional and caring. But the best part was watching the fear in their eyes. They all knew someone was watching now. 3 days later, I got another visit from Darnell. This time, he wasn't alone. Mom, this is Mr. Henderson, he said, introducing a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. He's the lawyer Ashley found. He thinks he's tracked down Dad's patents. Henderson shook my hand with the fake smile of someone who smelled money. Mrs. Washington, I believe your late husband may have been entitled to significant royalty payments that you never received. We're talking potentially millions of dollars. Millions? I acted surprised, though inside I was calculating how much fun this was going to be. The companies using Marcus's innovations have been paying licensing fees to a shell company for years, Henderson continued. But the money seems to have disappeared into some kind of trust arrangement. With your permission, I'd like to investigate further. Darnell was practically bouncing with excitement. Mom, this could change everything. You wouldn't have to stay in a place like this anymore. I looked around at the common room, which now had fresh flowers, working televisions, and staff members who actually responded when residents called for help. Actually, this place has improved quite a bit lately. What do you mean? Darnell asked, confused. New ownership, I said simply. They fired all the bad staff members. It's like a completely different place now. Darnell frowned. Still, Mom, if there's money out there that belongs to you, of course I want what's rightfully mine, I interrupted. Mr. Henderson, please do whatever you need to do. This was going to be interesting. Henderson would spend weeks chasing his own tail, trying to track down money that was already in my control. Meanwhile, I could continue my real plan. After they left, I called Edmund from the phone in my room. How's the renovation coming? I asked. Faster than expected. The new wing should be ready in 2 weeks. Full rehabilitation services, updated medical equipment. And those private rooms you requested. Perfect. And the staff bonuses? Distributed yesterday. The good employees were very grateful for the recognition. I smiled. The staff members who had actually cared about the residents, there were a few, had received substantial raises and bonuses. The message was clear. Treat people with dignity, and you'll be rewarded. There's one more thing, I said. I want to establish a fund for residents who can't afford proper care. Anonymous donations, of course. How much are you thinking? Start with $500,000. We can always add more. Over the next week, word spread through the nursing home community about the miracle transformation at Sunset Manor. Families started moving their loved ones here from more expensive facilities. The waiting list grew longer every day, but the real satisfaction came from watching Dorothy smile for the first time. She had a new room, a caring aide, and most importantly, her dignity back. Mrs. Rodriguez was taking art classes in the new activity room. Even Mrs. Chen had started talking regularly, telling me stories about her life before this place. You know, Mrs. Chen said one afternoon, as we sat in the beautiful new garden area, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually happy here now. People deserve to be treated with respect, I replied, especially when they're vulnerable. Whoever the new owner is, Mrs. Chen said, they must be an angel. I just smiled and squeezed her hand. Meanwhile, Henderson was getting frustrated. He'd called me twice that week with updates that weren't really updates. The paper trail is incredibly complex, he admitted during our second call. Whoever set up this trust arrangement knew what they were doing. It might take months to untangle. Well, keep trying, I encouraged him. I'm sure Darnell is eager for results. That was an understatement. Darnell had started calling me every other day, asking about Henderson's progress. His financial desperation was becoming more obvious with each conversation. Mom, Ashley thinks we should look into getting a loan against the potential inheritance, he said during one call. You know, just to get you into a better facility while we wait for the legal stuff to get sorted out. A loan? That sounds risky. Not if the money's really there. Henderson seems confident. I wasn't surprised that Ashley was already spending money that didn't exist. She'd probably already picked out a new car or planned a vacation. "Let me think about it," I said. That evening, I made another call to Edmund. "I want to accelerate the timeline," I told him. "How quickly can we implement Phase 2? The staff housing project? We could break ground next month if you approve the final plans." "Approve them? And Edmund, I want to do something special for the families of the residents here. A monthly newsletter, maybe some family events. These people aren't just warehoused here. They have children and grandchildren who love them." "I'll have Patricia coordinate with the activities director." "Good, because I want Darnell to see exactly what kind of place his mother is living in now." 2 weeks later, Sunset Manor hosted its first Family Appreciation Day. The event was held in the new community center, complete with live music, gourmet catering, and professional photographers to capture memories. Darnell and Ashley arrived looking skeptical, but their expressions changed quickly when they saw the transformation. The building had been completely renovated, with fresh paint, new furniture, and state-of-the-art medical equipment visible through glass doors. "Mom, this doesn't look like the same place," Ashley said, clearly confused. "It's not," I replied happily. "The new owners have invested millions in improvements. Look around. Doesn't it feel more like a luxury resort than a nursing home?" We toured the new facilities together. The physical therapy center with its heated pool and professional trainers. The art studio where Mrs. Rodriguez was teaching a watercolor class. The library with comfortable reading nooks and large print books. The dining room that looked like an upscale restaurant. "How much does it cost to live here now?" Darnell asked, obviously worried. "The same $500 a month," I said casually. The new owners believe quality care shouldn't depend on how much money you have. Ashley and Darnell exchanged a look that I pretended not to notice. During the family program, Patricia Coleman took the microphone to address the crowd of residents and their families. 6 months ago, this facility was failing its residents, she announced. But thanks to an anonymous benefactor who believes elderly people deserve dignity and respect, we've been able to transform not just this building, but the entire culture of care here. The crowd applauded enthusiastically. Many families were wiping away tears as they looked at their loved ones, who were clearly happier and healthier than they'd been in years. "Our mystery owner has asked me to read a brief statement," Patricia continued. "They want you to know that every person here matters. Every story matters. Every life has value that can't be measured in dollars and cents." I watched Darnell's face as those words sank in. For just a moment, he looked ashamed, but it passed quickly. After the program, as we sat in the elegant new dining room, sharing a meal that actually tasted good, Darnell brought up the money again. "Mom, Henderson thinks he's getting close to tracking down Dad's patents. He wants to meet with you again next week." "That's fine," I said, cutting into a perfectly cooked piece of salmon. "Though honestly, I'm not in any hurry. I'm very comfortable here now." "But Mom," Ashley interrupted, "if there's millions of dollars out there, you could afford to live anywhere. A penthouse apartment, or a house with a full-time caregiver." "Why would I want that?" I asked innocently. "I have friends here, activities I enjoy, medical care whenever I need it, staff members who treat me like family. It was true. The new staff was wonderful, and the residents had become like a second family to me. Mrs. Chen and I played cards every evening. Dorothy had taught me to knit. Franklin told the most amazing stories about his days as a jazz musician. Besides, I continued, at my age, what do I need with millions of dollars? I can't take it with me. Darnell and Ashley looked horrified at the suggestion that I might not pursue every penny. But you could leave something for your family, Ashley pressed, for your grandchildren's college funds. Ah, there it was, the real motivation. Not concern for my well-being, but concern for their inheritance. Well, I said thoughtfully, I suppose if there is money out there, I'll have to decide what to do with it when the time comes. That night, after Darnell and Ashley left, I sat in my comfortable new room. I'd moved to a larger space in the renovated wing and called Edmund. It's time for Phase 3, I told him. The Henderson investigation? Exactly. I want you to make sure he finds what he's looking for, but not all at once. Let him discover the money in stages. Make him work for it. Any particular timeline? I thought about Darnell's desperate face, about Ashley's greedy calculations, about the $500 a month they thought they were saving by dumping me in the cheapest place they could find. Let's say 6 months. Give them hope, then more hope, then crushing disappointment. What kind of disappointment? The kind that comes from learning that the money they've been counting on has already been spent on something they don't approve of. Edmund chuckled. I think I understand. And Mrs. Washington, for what it's worth, what you've done here is remarkable. These residents are lucky to have you. They're lucky to have dignity and respect. That shouldn't be remarkable, but apparently it is. 3 days later, Henderson called with exciting news. Mrs. Washington, we've had a breakthrough. I've located the trust account. Your late husband was indeed receiving substantial royalty payments. We're talking about $8.2 million total. I gasped dramatically. $8 million? That can't be right. It's all there, documented and verified. There's just one small complication. What kind of complication? The trust was structured with some unusual provisions. I'm still working through the legal language, but it appears the money may have been released early for some kind of emergency expenditure. What does that mean? I'm not sure yet. But don't worry. If someone has accessed your money illegally, we'll get it back. I've scheduled a meeting with the trust administrators for next week. After I hung up, I laughed out loud for the first time in months. Henderson was about to discover that the illegal access he was investigating had been authorized by me, the legitimate beneficiary, and that every penny had been spent on transforming this nursing home. But the best part was still coming. Soon, Darnell would learn that his mother, the woman he'd dumped in the cheapest facility he could find, had been worth $8 million all along. And that she'd spent that money on helping other people instead of making his life easier. Mrs. Chen knocked on my doorframe. Dolores, is everything okay? I heard you laughing. Everything is perfect, I told her. Better than perfect, actually. Good, she said, settling into the comfortable chair by my window. Because I wanted to tell you something. I've been thinking about what you said on your first day here, about making them pay. Oh? Well, I've been watching you these past few months, the way you've handled everything, and I think you already have. I smiled at my dear friend. If only she knew how much more paying was still to come. That weekend, Darnell called in a panic. "Mom, Henderson says someone might have stolen the money. He wants to meet with you immediately. This is serious. We're talking about $8 million. Stolen? I managed to sound appropriately shocked. Who would do such a thing? He doesn't know yet, but he's going to find out. Mom, this is our money. Dad's money. We can't let someone just take it. Our money. Interesting how it had suddenly become our money when he thought it was missing. Well, I said calmly, I suppose we'll just have to trust Mr. Henderson to handle it. Trust him? Mom, this is $8 million. We need to take action. What kind of action would you suggest, dear? There was a pause. I don't know. Maybe we should hire another lawyer, or a private investigator, or go to the police. That sounds expensive. It would be worth it to get our money back. There was that word again, our. Darnell, I said gently, when you brought me here, you told me this was all you could afford, $500 a month. You said your father didn't leave us rich. I know, but that was before we knew about the patents, so you had no problem with me living in a terrible facility when you thought there was no money. But now that you think there might be millions, suddenly you're concerned about my welfare. Silence on the other end of the line. Mom, that's not... Look, the important thing is getting the money back. Is it? I asked. Or is the important thing making sure I'm properly cared for? Both, obviously both, but we both knew which one he really cared about. Well, I said, I'm sure Mr. Henderson will figure it out. In the meantime, I'm quite happy here. This new ownership really has created something special. After I hung up, I realized that the hardest part was over. Darnell had revealed exactly who he was. When he thought nobody important was watching, now all that was left was showing him the consequences of his choices. The final confrontation was coming, and I was ready. Henderson's investigation was moving faster than I'd expected. Within 2 weeks, he'd tracked the money trail right to Edmund's law office. But Edmund was a professional. He made Henderson work for every piece of information, dragging out the process and building suspense perfectly. Meanwhile, life at Sunset Manor continued to flourish. We'd started a pen pal program with local elementary schools, where children wrote letters to residents. Mrs. Chen had become particularly close with a third grader named Emma, who shared her love of butterflies. Dorothy was teaching origami classes that had become so popular we had to move them to the main community room. But the real transformation was in the residents themselves. People who had been withdrawn and depressed were now laughing, making friends, and finding purpose again. Franklin had started a weekly jazz appreciation hour that drew visitors from all over the city. Mrs. Rodriguez's art class had grown so much that we'd had to hire a second instructor. I was in the middle of my own watercolor painting, a surprisingly relaxing hobby I'd discovered, when Patricia knocked on my door. Mrs. Washington, there's a gentleman here to see you. Says his name is Henderson and that you're expecting him. My pulse quickened. This was it. I found Henderson in the elegant lobby, looking frustrated and confused. Darnell and Ashley were with him, both wearing expressions of barely controlled panic. Mrs. Washington, Henderson began without preamble, we need to talk. I've traced your trust fund. Oh, good, I said pleasantly. Did you find the money? That's the problem. I found where it went. He pulled out a thick folder. Every penny of your $8.2 million inheritance was liquidated 2 months ago and used to purchase this nursing home. Darnell's face went white. What? Furthermore, Henderson continued, the purchase was made through a shell company controlled by your trust, which means, he stopped, staring at me, which means you authorized it. Ashley grabbed my arm. That can't be right. Tell him that's not right. I looked at my daughter-in-law's desperate face, then at my son's shocked expression. Actually, it is right. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom, Darnell whispered, what are you saying? I'm saying I used my inheritance from your father to buy this place, every brick, every bed, every square inch of it. Henderson was staring at me like I'd lost my mind. But Mrs. Washington, why would you spend $8 million on a run-down nursing home? Because, I said calmly, when my son brought me here, it was the worst facility I'd ever seen. The staff was cruel, the conditions were horrible, and vulnerable elderly people were being treated like garbage. So I decided to fix it. You decided to fix it? Ashley's voice was rising. With $8 million? Our $8 million? Actually, it was my $8 million from my late husband's patents. Money that I chose not to tell anyone about. Darnell slumped into one of the lobby's comfortable new chairs. You knew. All this time you knew about the money. Of course I knew. Marcus told me about the trust before he died. I just wanted to see what kind of man my son really was when he thought nobody was watching. And? Darnell's voice was barely audible. I looked around at the beautiful lobby, filled with residents and their families enjoying afternoon tea. Mrs. Chen waved at me from across the room where she was showing Emma's latest letter to another resident. You brought me to a place where cockroaches ran across the floor, where the staff screamed at elderly people and ignored their cries for help, where the food was inedible and the mattresses were so thin you could feel the springs. You paid $500 a month and told me I should be grateful. Mom, you couldn't afford more than $500 a month for the woman who raised you, fed you, clothed you, and put you through college. The woman who helped you buy your house? Ashley was crying now. But the money, we could have gotten you into a nice place. You could have what? I interrupted. Put me somewhere expensive so you could feel better about yourselves. The money was never the issue, Ashley. The issue was that you didn't think I was worth spending money on. Henderson cleared his throat awkwardly. Mrs. Washington, I understand you're upset, but surely you can see this was an irrational use of your inheritance. We could potentially challenge the trust administrators who allowed this. Mr. Henderson, I said firmly. I was the trust administrator. I made the decision myself, with full legal authority and sound mind. Your services are no longer needed. He looked stunned. But $8 million for a nursing home, for dignity, I corrected, for respect, for making sure that vulnerable people are treated like human beings instead of burdens to be warehoused. Darnell finally looked up at me. So there's no money left? Oh, there's plenty of money left. This place generates revenue now. We have a waiting list 6 months long. The state is using us as a model for nursing home reform. I've created jobs for over 100 people. But no money for us, Ashley said bitterly. No money for you, I confirmed. Tell me, Ashley, when was the last time you asked how I was doing here? When was the last time either of you visited just to spend time with me, not to ask about money? Neither of them answered. I've been here for 4 months, I continued. Darnell has visited me exactly 3 times. All 3 visits were about money. Not once did you ask if I was happy, if I was making friends, if the staff was treating me well. We thought you were okay here, Darnell mumbled. No, you thought I was taken care of cheaply. There's a difference. Mrs. Chen appeared at my elbow. Dolores, is everything all right? You seem upset. I smiled at my dear friend. Everything's fine. Mrs. Chen, I'd like you to meet my son Darnell and his wife Ashley. This is Mrs. Chen, one of my best friends here. Mrs. Chen studied them with sharp eyes. Oh, these are the ones who never visit. Ashley flushed red. We've been busy. Too busy to visit your mother? Mrs. Chen interrupted. I have 4 children. They all visit every week. Some of them drive 3 hours to get here. Mrs. Chen, I said gently, would you mind asking Patricia to join us? I think we need to make some things official. A few minutes later, Patricia arrived with Edmund Davies, who I'd called earlier that morning. Darnell Ashley, I said, I'd like you to meet my lawyer, Edmund Davies. Edmund, this is my son and daughter-in-law. Edmund nodded politely. I've heard quite a lot about you both. Mrs. Washington asked me to prepare some documents, Patricia said, handing me a folder. The papers you requested. I opened the folder and pulled out several legal documents. Darnell, I want you to understand something. When you brought me here, you made it clear that you considered me a financial burden. You found the cheapest possible solution and walked away. Mom, please. I'm not finished. I held up the first document. This is my new will. As the owner of Sunset Manor, I'm leaving the facility to a foundation that will ensure it continues operating as a model care facility forever. Darnell's face crumpled. Mom, please don't do this. I'm sorry. I know I made mistakes, but... The second document, I continued, establishes a scholarship fund for nursing students who want to specialize in geriatric care. It's funded with $2 million from the facility's operating profits. Ashley was sobbing openly now. We're sorry. We'll do better. We'll visit more. The third document creates a residents' advocacy fund. Any elderly person in this city who can't afford quality care will have their expenses covered anonymously. I set the papers down and looked at my son, really looked at him. For just a moment, I saw the little boy who used to bring me dandelions and tell me he loved me. But that little boy had grown into a man who saw his aging mother as a problem to be solved as cheaply as possible. Darnell, I said softly, I want you to understand something. This was never about punishing you. It was about showing you who you really are. I'm your son, he whispered. Yes, you are. And I love you. But love doesn't mean I have to enable your selfishness or pretend that your actions don't have consequences. Henderson gathered his papers, clearly eager to escape the awkward situation. I'll send you my final bill. After he left, we sat in silence for several minutes. Around us, the life of Sunset Manor continued. Residents chatted with visitors. Children's laughter echoed from the activity room. and staff members moved through the lobby with genuine smiles and caring attitudes. "Mom," Darnell finally said, "what can I do? How can I make this right?" I studied his face, looking for genuine remorse instead of just regret at losing money he'd never actually had. "You can start by answering a question honestly," I said. "If there had never been any money, if Marcus really had died broke and I really was just a burden you had to manage, would you have treated me differently?" Darnell opened his mouth, then closed it again. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "That's what I thought," I said sadly. "But I can change," he insisted. "I can be better." "Can you? Because Darnell, the way you treat people when you think nobody important is watching, that's who you really are." Ashley wiped her eyes. "What about the grandchildren? They love you." "And I love them. But that doesn't mean I'm going to pretend their parents are good people just because we share DNA." I stood up, suddenly feeling every one of my 68 years. "I think this conversation is over." "Mom, wait!" Darnell called as I started toward the elevator. "Will you at least think about it? About giving us another chance?" I turned back to look at them one more time. "Darnell, in the 4 months I've been here, do you know who has visited me most often?" "Mrs. Chen's granddaughter Emma, who's 8 years old. She comes every Saturday to read me stories and show me her drawings." "But she's not even related to you." "No," I agreed. "She just thinks I'm worth spending time with." That evening, I sat in the garden area with Mrs. Chen, Dorothy, and Franklin, watching the sunset through the large windows. The space was filled with the quiet contentment that comes from people who feel safe and valued. "So," Mrs. Chen said finally, "I take it that was the big revelation?" I laughed. Was I that obvious? "Honey," Dorothy said, patting my hand, "we all knew something was up. You don't transform a place like this overnight without serious money behind it. Plus," Franklin added with a grin, "you kept getting mysterious phone calls from lawyers. Are you angry with me for not telling you?" "Angry?" Mrs. Chen shook her head. "Girl, you gave us our lives back, our dignity back. Why would we be angry? Besides," Dorothy added, "it was fun watching you play detective with your own son." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching other residents enjoy the evening. Some were reading in the library area, others were playing cards or working on puzzles. A few family members were still visiting. Sharing dinner in the dining room. "Do you think he'll change?" Franklin asked eventually. "Your son, I mean." "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe, but it's not my job to fix him anymore. He's a grown man, and he made his choices." "What about the grandchildren?" Dorothy asked gently. That was the hard part. I did love Darnell's children, even if I barely knew them anymore. But I wasn't going to enable their parents' greed just to maintain a relationship built on obligation rather than genuine affection. "If they want to know me, really know me, they'll find a way," I said. "But I'm not going to buy their love with inheritance promises." 3 weeks later, I got an unexpected visitor. Darnell's oldest daughter, 16-year-old Keisha, showed up on a Saturday afternoon. "Hi, Grandma," she said shyly. "I hope it's okay that I came. Dad doesn't know I'm here." My heart melted a little bit. "Of course it's okay, sweetheart. I'm always happy to see you." We sat in the lobby, and I really looked at her for the first time in years. She'd grown into a beautiful young woman with Marcus's eyes and my stubborn chin. "Dad told me what happened," she said quietly. "About the money and everything. What did he tell you exactly?" "That you had millions of dollars hidden away, and instead of helping the family, you spent it all on this place out of spite." I sighed. "Is that what you think?" Keisha looked around at the bustling, happy environment of Sunset Manor. "I don't know. This place seems really nice, and you seem happy." "I am happy. Dad says you're trying to punish him." "What do you think?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I think Dad was mad that he couldn't buy a new car." Out of the mouths of babes. "Keisha, can I ask you something? When was the last time your father brought you to visit me just because he wanted us to spend time together?" She thought about it. "I don't remember, maybe when I was little." "Do you want to know why I really spent the money this way?" She nodded. I told her the whole story. About the conditions when I first arrived, about the staff who treated elderly people cruelly, about watching vulnerable residents be ignored and abused. I told her about Mrs. Chen, who hadn't spoken for months until she felt safe again. About Dorothy, who'd been calling for help that never came. About Franklin, whose stories about his jazz career had been dismissed as senile rambling until someone actually listened. "So you see," I finished, "it wasn't about spite. It was about dignity, about making sure people are treated with respect, especially when they're vulnerable." Keisha was crying quietly. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I'm sorry Dad brought you to a horrible place. Your father did what he thought he had to do. But sweetheart, the way we treat people when we think nobody important is watching, that shows who we really are. I want to be better than that." "Then you will be." She visited for 2 hours, meeting Mrs. Chen and hearing Franklin's stories and watching Dorothy teach origami. When it was time to leave, she hugged me tightly. "Can I come back next weekend?" "You can come anytime you want, even if Dad gets mad, especially if your dad gets mad." Over the next few months, Keisha became a regular visitor. Sometimes she brought her younger brother Marcus, who was fascinated by Franklin's jazz stories. Neither Darnell nor Ashley approved, but they couldn't stop their children from taking the bus to visit their grandmother. The best part was watching my grandchildren discover that elderly people weren't just burdens to be managed, but individuals with rich histories and valuable wisdom. Marcus started a oral history project for school, interviewing residents about their lives. Keisha volunteered in the art therapy program. 6 months after the confrontation, Darnell called me one evening. "Mom, I've been thinking about what you said, about who I really am when nobody's watching." "Oh?" "I want you to know that I've started volunteering at a homeless shelter downtown every Saturday morning." I was genuinely surprised. "That's wonderful, Darnell." "I'm not doing it to get back in your good graces," he said quickly. "I mean, I hope it helps, but that's not why. I'm doing it because you were right. I didn't like the person I saw in the mirror after that day." "How's it going?" "It's hard. Some of these people have been failed by everyone in their lives. But Mom, some of them just need someone to see them as human beings, you know? To treat them with basic dignity." "Yes," I said softly. "I know. I still think you could have handled things differently. Maybe talked to me first, given me a chance to do better." "Maybe, but Darnell, would you have listened, really listened?" Or would you have just told me what you thought I wanted to hear? There was a long pause. Probably the second thing, he admitted. People don't change because someone tells them to. They change when the consequences of their actions finally become clear. Are you ever going to forgive me? I forgave you the day it happened, I told him honestly. Forgiveness isn't the same thing as pretending there are no consequences. What about the money? I know it's gone, but maybe there's some way. Darnell, I interrupted gently. Stop. Just stop. The money is exactly where it should be. It's housing and feeding and caring for people who need it. It's providing jobs for people who treat the elderly with respect. It's funding scholarships for nursing students who want to make a difference. That money is doing more good than it ever could have done. Sitting in a bank account, waiting to buy you a new car. I know. I wish things could be different. They can be different, starting now, but that's up to you. A year later, Sunset Manor hosted its second annual Family Appreciation Day. The event had grown so much that we held it in the local community center to accommodate all the families and visitors. Keisha and Marcus were there, of course. They'd become fixtures at the facility, helping with activities and bringing their friends to visit. Darnell came too, looking genuinely interested in meeting the residents and learning about their lives. Ashley stayed home, still angry about the money, but I was learning to accept that some people never change. Mrs. Chen, now 90 and still sharp as a tack, gave a speech about the transformation of Sunset Manor. 3 years ago, she told the crowd, this place was where families sent elderly relatives to die. Today, it's where we come to live. The difference is simple. Someone decided we were worth investing in. The crowd gave her a standing ovation. I wiped away tears, thinking about how far we'd all come. After the event, as families were leaving, Darnell approached me. Mom, I have something to tell you. What's that? Ashley and I are getting divorced. I wasn't entirely surprised. Their marriage had been built on financial expectations that were never going to be met. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm not, he said. Turns out, when you remove the money from the equation, you find out what people really care about. Ashley cared about the money. I'm trying to learn to care about something more important. And what's that? Being the kind of person my children can be proud of. Being the kind of son my mother deserved. I looked at this man, my son, who was finally learning what I'd been trying to teach him his whole life. You know, I said, there might be a volunteer opportunity here at Sunset Manor. If you're interested, we can always use help with the men's discussion group. His face lit up. Really? You'd want me here? Darnell, I've always wanted you here. I just wanted you to come for the right reasons. 2 years later, Darnell was the coordinator of our men's programming and had started a support group for adult children learning to care for aging parents. Keisha was studying to become a social worker, inspired by her time at Sunset Manor. Marcus had decided to become a music therapist after seeing how much joy Franklin's jazz programs brought to residents. And me, I was exactly where I belonged, surrounded by people who valued each other, not for what they could provide financially, but for the stories they told, the wisdom they shared, and the simple human connection they offered. Mrs. Chen and I still played cards every evening. Dorothy still taught origami, though her arthritis had slowed her down. Franklin had published a memoir about his jazz career, with proceeds going to the facility's music therapy program. "Do you ever regret it?" Mrs. Chen asked me one evening as we sat in our favorite spot in the garden. "Spending all that money on this place instead of leaving it to your family?" I looked around at the community we'd built together, residents who had found purpose and friendship in their final years, staff members who came to work excited about making a difference, families who visited not out of obligation but out of genuine love and connection. "Never," I said, "not for a single second." "Even knowing what it cost you?" "It didn't cost me anything," I replied. "It bought me everything that matters." She smiled and squeezed my hand. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think your husband Marcus would be proud of what you did with his money." I thought about Marcus, about the patents he'd developed in our garage, about the trust fund he'd set up to take care of me. He'd wanted to make sure I'd be comfortable in my old age. Mission accomplished. "I think he would be too," I said. "I think he'd be very proud indeed." As the sun set through the garden windows, casting a warm glow over the residents and families, enjoying their evening together, I realized that revenge had never been the point. Justice had been the point. Dignity had been the point. Showing people that how we treat the vulnerable among us defines who we really are. That had been the point. And in the end, we'd all learned something valuable. Darnell had learned that love isn't about what you can get, but what you're willing to give. I'd learned that money spent on human dignity is never money wasted. And everyone at Sunset Manor had learned that growing old doesn't mean becoming invisible or worthless. The best part, we were all still learning, still growing, still finding new ways to care for each other. Because that's what family really means. Not the people you're related to by blood, but the people who show up for each other when it matters. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.